Hey there, folks. This is Kyle with another edition of the My Business Launch Secrets YouTube channel. This is my journey in starting a new online business and trying to get from $0 to $1 million in revenue over the course of a year. We're on day 114 of that journey. And today I first have to admit that I have been a little bit delinquent in recording these videos, have missed the past couple of days. And I'm also kind of pissed off because I just recorded this episode until I realized that I wasn't recording jack shit. And now I have to redo the whole damn thing. So there's several reasons why I have skipped a couple days. I mean, honestly, again, I'm still back to a lack of motivation and desire to working on this, in large part having to deal with the fact that I'm working through a potential, big shift in my day job, which I do still have. I am doing this all part-time, which is why the progress is pretty slow going. And anyway, in this process of thinking through a change in my day job, which will be a pretty significant shift for me, that has me, frankly, just a bit distracted. A couple of days ago, when I first neglected to record a video, I'd spoken to a recruiter of the company that I've been interviewing with, several interviews over the past month. She basically just told me, yeah, everybody's interested. We want to take it to the next stage. And so they're going to fly me out to go visit their facilities next week, meet with a few people. I'm going to spend like 3 hours. I'm going to fly halfway across the country, spend like 3 hours talking to some people, looking at some stuff, I guess. I got to fly all the way back home. It doesn't seem like a great use of time, but whatever. This is what you do to get a new job. And anyway, through some interactions there, and I also got a friend that works at the company and kind of talking to him about the situation. It seems they're, by my estimation, probably interested in making me an offer. Let's just assume, like, numbers-wise, things make sense in terms of what I'm expecting and what they're able to offer, etc. Ultimately, at the end of the day, the question just comes down to, is this something I really want to pursue? Is this something that I'm willing to accept the added responsibility and the higher expectations in this new kind of role relative to my very low expectation, relatively minimal work current role, but very frustrating role because of the very low expectations, right? Am I willing to make that trade at this point in my career? And anyway, I rambled on in the last video that I wasn't recording about how are you supposed to know how to make these decisions, and do you go after things that you listen to your heart versus your head in making these decisions? Me, traditionally, I'm more of a thinker, rational person. I like to make more logical decisions in life, but I've maybe recognized over the past few years, just through a variety of circumstances and things I've learned and transitioning now through a couple different jobs, and at this point in my career where I'm at, I'm 40 years old, so I guess that makes me a mid-career sort of dude. I'm more so, income and salary and all that, it's definitely important. I'm not gonna quit my job and go be a school teacher making like 20 grand or something a year, or whatever teachers make these days. But at the same time, I want to have a job that, while paying well, is also something that I'm just personally interested in and am actually eager to go work on day in, day out, because, well, frankly, we all know that during our working years, the vast majority of our time is spent either at our job or going to and from our job or being at home thinking about our job and what all crap we have to do. That obviously consumes, if you're working a full-time gig, that consumes a lot of your mental bandwidth. So I think the more you can use that time to think about things that are, again, just personally interesting to you and are personally stimulating to you, then that's the route you should go. And so that is, in my view, finding the thing that you're more personally passionate about, so more from the heart, from the emotional side of things, rather than just thinking pure logically. Pure logic, in my situation, I would say I should just stick with the job I have. Yes, it sucks, but it pays very well, has good benefits, low stress in a sense of I'm not, having a bunch of pressure put on me to deliver certain things, every day or whatever the case is. Maybe I have stresses from me just of my own making by the fact that, again, I'm just frustrated in the role for various reasons, and so I just put those things upon myself. But again, in the grand scheme of things, it's a low stress kind of job. So logically, the right answer is, again, just stick with what I'm doing, write it out for another, 25, 30 years, rack up the money in the 401k or the Roth IRAs, retire a millionaire. Of course, this is in 30 years, so probably everybody's a millionaire by that point in time, and $1 million doesn't hardly probably pays the bills at that point in time. But anyway, point being, I could retire with a comfortable cushion, I guess you'd say, of being able to pay the bills, etc. So that's the logical thing. Just stay on the path I'm on, because again, the externals of somebody else that we're looking at my situation, it looks like a very solid. But again, the problem for me is that even though yes, all those external factors are very favorable for where I'm at, all the internal stuff that nobody can actually look at your situation and see, but I can share just how I'm feeling day to day. And it's just like very frustrating. And I do my best when I come home to try to just set that aside and, try to be present with my wife, with my kids, not to bring my Debbie Downerness right into the home. And I would say I'm moderately successful doing that. I mean, some days are better than others, obviously, but I would certainly rather be in a situation where I was much more energized by the work I was doing. Again, not to say any job is going to be like every single day coming home, jumping up and down because you're so excited about the work you're doing. But again, on the whole, just looking at overall, is it something that's exciting you day to day, generally speaking, or is it something that's just like really kind of tearing you apart on the inside day to day? And so I think not just for my day to day kind of emotional well-being, but I also think that impacts your long-term well-being. Again, I believe that the emotions that you go through, do have a physiological impact on your body. And therefore, I do believe it's important to assess how you are treating any situation. And to the extent that you're able to make a change and choose something that will bring you more joy as opposed to more dread on the day-to-day basis, I think you should choose the one that brings more joy, right? Well, I mean, that's just what I think. You can think whatever you want. And so I guess all that to say, I mean, I think if this new company ultimately makes me an offer, and again, if the numbers are reasonably in line with what I'm expecting, then at least right now, today, tomorrow could be a different story, but today, certainly on the fence of, or on the side of going ahead and jumping all in. And, something Russell Brunson talks about is thinking about big decisions or big things going on in your life. It helps to just allow yourself to think through, like, what's the absolute worst that could happen in this situation if you go down that path. And if you figure out what the absolute worst is and you're willing to accept that if that comes to pass, like, it's not the end of the world, like, you're not going to die, you're not going to lose your family sort of thing. If you're willing to accept those potential consequences, then that ultimately kind of frees you up to actually then go and have success in that, going down that path, versus if you're trying to go down that path and you're just constantly worried about, oh my gosh, this negative outcome if I don't perform, that's a lot of times what ultimately leads you to failure. I mean, I think Tony Robbins uses an illustration of saying that if you have an empty road, if there's a single tree on a long road, middle of nowhere, no other traffic, but you put a single tree along the side of the road. I forget how he tells it exactly, but more or less, if you have any sort of object or distraction there, you will find an increase of people having accidents at that point in the road, because that is something that distraction, that object on the side, that tree on the side of the road, is something people will turn their attention towards. And where you turn your attention towards, that is where you end up steering your car or your life in general, use it as a metaphor, and boom, you freaking run into this tree. Even though, of course, logically you're thinking, I'm looking at the tree because I want to avoid hitting the tree. But again, like subconsciously or whatever's going on, that's what ultimately leads you into the tree. And so again, the idea of recognize that this tree is out there. Yes, if I hit that tree, that would be a worst case scenario, given that I'm on this empty road, nothing else that could possibly hit me or that I could possibly hit. But I see that tree, I recognize that it's there, and I understand what the worst case would be, but I'm going to acknowledge that, but then I'm going to focus back on what the task is and where I want to go, which is to a successful path of not hitting the tree. And again, simply by acknowledging that, yes, it's there, I'm not going to focus on that. I'm going to focus on the positive outcome. That is what can ultimately lead to a more successful outcome. And so that is just something I'm trying to do more so, even again, just my day job, of thinking about making a big decision, a big change, such as the one I might be doing here, thinking about what's the worst possible outcome. Well, the worst possible outcome is like I get into the job, I'm just not able to actually figure out how to do the job properly. The company decides I really suck at that job and they fire me or I get laid off or whatever the case is. Like if that's the worst case scenario, then like what would I have to live with at that point in time? Well, I would have to live with the fact that, shit, I got fired from a job. Can I pay my bills? Well, I'm fortunate. I do have a little bit of a cushion on my finances, so I would be able to, at least pay some of my bills for a short period of time, so I could get through that piece of it. And then I don't think finding a new job for me in the field that I'm in, with the experience I have, finding a new job within a month, frankly, probably won't take any time at all. So while sure there would be a temporary kind of period of discomfort there, having to go through that, what may be a traumatic experience, just depending on the circumstances. But again, ultimately recognizing that I could eventually get through that bit of a down period and get just onto something different, even if that meant coming back to a similar type of job as what I have now, which again, maybe I have to go back to doing something I'm not as excited about doing. But again, I think I could still find something that pays well, has good benefits and all that good stuff. So just from a taking care of the family's perspective, that's something I am confident I could take care of pretty quickly. So yeah, I think that for me, that's just kind of the worst case scenario. And so again, I recognize that. I understand that might be a possible outcome. Sure that if that's, again, ultimately it happens, sure, there would be other like negative consequences of like whatever. I might view myself as a failure, or the people I'm working with, some of them are friends, and it'd be very personally disappointing if I wasn't able to, work up to their standards, so to speak. Maybe I lose some face, in other words. But again, like, who cares at the end of the day? There's so many opportunities, and there's so many opportunities out in the world. It's like, even if you, whatever, kind of shows one group of people that, oh, you weren't cut it to do this specific kind of job, that doesn't mean you're disqualified from doing any work in the entire world and all of existence, right? So, yeah, that's the way I'm trying to look at it right now. And again, just recognize that for what it is. Recognize that I will, need to work my butt off, and it will require more sacrifice in terms of some time with my family, just because it would be more traveling and things like that. But again, that's, something I talk with my wife about, and we have some agreement there on the path forward. So yeah, on the flip side, I think that's also important thing to think about is, if I get into this role and I'm very wildly successful, like what would that look like? That would be, there's like huge upside potential, so you got this like minimal downside risk, but like huge upside potential, which is, if I'm very successful, like this is the type of company that I would be in a role that would like directly impact the value of the company, and I would be a stockholder at this point, through bonuses or whatever things I would get. And, so financially for me, it could be like extremely beneficial. Way more than what I could ever do in my current role today. In addition, just obviously could get a lot of kudos from this community of people that I work around, and recognition that, hey, yeah, Kyle's a guy that can come in and step into a new role and really have a big impact. And so, yeah, so I think there's that upside is just quite significant. Again, that downside risk, if I'm just not able to cut it, the grand scheme of things, it's not a huge deal, I guess. So anyway, that's not anything to do with my online business, but the lessons, I guess, are similar. In terms of the online business thing, I do try to have a positive outlook in terms of wanting to achieve this goal, getting to $1 million and whatnot. Honestly, I'm not taking significant enough steps on a day-to-day basis right now, frankly, because I just don't have the level of desire that I need to, and I recognize that. And to me, for now, that's okay. It's not to say that I don't think about this every day. I'm not coming up with new ideas every day, but coming up with ideas obviously is not going to result in a business being created. So there is obviously that extra step I still have to kick into gear, but I'm just not going to do it until I really have that desire. And I think right now it's going to kind of be hinged upon, again, how this whole job situation turns out and what the result ends up being from that decision, just because that, again, is taking up a lot of my just kind of mental energy of thinking through various scenarios and whatever else. In a way, that's kind of where I'm very good, but also it can hold me back in some ways, is that whenever I'm dealing with any kind of problem that I'm looking at, I tend to just analyze it in my brain like continually until it comes time to actually have to make a decision or come up with an answer or whatever. And then I'll, make the decision, spit out the answer, whatever. But I'm not great about just kind of segmenting the amount of time that my brain spends thinking about one thing and then just shift to another thing, which is probably just another area I need to work on improving, but maybe not, because again, served me pretty well in my life thus far. Anyway, that's a bunch of rambling about whatever. This is again on my own video diary to myself. So hello to me in 20 years when I go back and watch these maybe, or to my kids. Hi kids, this is your dad thinking through random big life decisions. And you two children of mine should recognize that any decision that you make in this life does have consequences, but what's important to do is simply recognize the consequence of that decision and simply make the choice to move forward in that decision, even if it does fail and even if you do have to deal with those potential negative outcomes from that decision. Because what you don't want to do is simply look at everything and say, oh, it's too risky, I can't do this, I can't do that. You never end up making a decision. 30 years of your life go by and you're like, holy shit, like what? I didn't get to do any of the things I really wanted to do in the prime of my career because I was unwilling to take certain risks. Yes, build up a little bit of a safety net financially for yourself, probably first, early in your career. Once you get that under your belt, take big chances, take big risks, and I know you'll find success. So with that, hope you're all kicking ass and taking names out there. I'll see you next time. Peace.